in order to work in this life. In fact, I'm sad for those who don't feel that they are loved.
Can you believe it? Just before he passed away, the late Fred Rogers, the iconic presenter of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, unveiled some shocking facts about the program, truthful anecdotes about creative strain, intense situations, and a stunning episode that PBS nearly passed on airing. No scandals or rumors here, just the genuine deal. Join us as we delve into Fred's dying words, find the obstacles he kept concealed, and see how his most intimate revelation affected everyone around him. Fred Rogers would always start filming first thing in the morning, before the sun came up. 35 meant leisurely laps in a little YMCA pool next to the studio. As he swam gently, counting strokes, he let the cool water to flush his brain. After that, he sat silently for a while, counting his breaths as he did so. At the end of the morning, he had to weigh himself, and the results had to be precisely 143, his secret code meaning, "I love you." Like meteorologists observing clouds, the studio team awaited the figures. All hands were on deck in case Fred scowled at the scale, signaling a script-heavy day. Subjects were lighter, and takes were smoother with a brilliant nod. According to seasoned grips, the scale had more influence on the call sheet than the director ever has. The show's pulse was determined by the numbers on that dial, even by the interns who were just starting off. Rogers would always sneak beneath the set walls to adjust objects by hand before making his way to the wardrobe. The model street's little traffic signal was his primary aim. Because it had to face the left camera instead of the right, children saw stop before go. Union carpenters made fun of the preacher with a wrench, but by 8 in the morning, they had cleared the area. The light was shining in the direction he thought children needed it, and Fred's jumper was buttoned. That innocuous adjustment frequently interfered with a precise shot clock. Over time, warnings and paperwork were a necessary evil of relocating surroundings. Fred, however, chose to trade in a few minutes of his own screen time instead of abandoning the patch. The presenter and crew eventually settled on a ceremonial handshake as a sign of goodwill. Every stagehand understood that the traffic signal was a better way to calm tensions than any coffee run, but no memo ever recorded it. Actual suspense reached the PBS stopwatch as soon as the set was prepared. Full 60-second silences, which allowed youngsters to reflect, were insisted upon by Rogers. There could not have been any blank spots in the network's schedule longer than 22 minutes. Behind the camera, floor director Kathy Borland kept track of the seconds using a red cue card. Behind the scenes, accountants were meticulously tallying the cash lost due to underwriting. Every day, only one of two types of clocks could be considered victorious. While the sponsors were concerned by the silent stretches, Fred regarded them as if they were oxygen. When filming was underway, the studio youngsters would sometimes fidget. While waiting for the presenter to speak again, Borland displayed scribbled reminders to breathe slowly. In other places, editors cut, such as during puppet introductions or song reprises, removing seconds. In the face of the deluge of television sound, Fred's silence remained unbroken. There was something else that kept spirits up, even if anxiety increased when pauses were layered across takes. In the midst of setting up, an audio technician retrieved a battered skateboard that had been dropped by a patron. Fred hopped on one morning during rehearsal and rolled past the camera dolly with his cardigan flapping. While the adults were frozen, the young extras were lighted up by the motion. The lesson that the wheel hooked a cable and jammed film for good was that delicate balance counts more than speed, as he subsequently stated. A union letter concerning unsafe stunts was spurred by the tragedy, but an unseen crew tradition was also born from it. From that point on, a little skateboard sticker slid under the tram track, serving as a constant reminder that even serene art may lean towards playful risk-taking. Rogers subtly tested boundaries while protecting his message in this long-lost anecdote found in rehearsal records. Each decision, no matter how large or little, benefited a child's developing heart. And behind the amiable jumper sat a skilled artisan juggling clocks, cables, and peaceful moments. Pupils learnt emotions they didn't yet have words for through the puppet show at the neighborhood of make-believe. After placing his hand on Daniel Tiger, Fred Rogers immediately lowered his voice, allowing concern and awe to shine through. In the next split second, he might seize Lady Elaine Fairchild, change his body language and vocal intonation, and unleash his pent-up anger in the form of fun barbs. While the seasoned team anticipated these twists, the novice puppeteers were taken aback by the rapidity of the transformation. Afterwards, they muttered that it was as if they were witnessing the merging of two souls. As a youngster, Fred would frequently keep his fearful inquiries to himself, and Daniel Tiger would act as a mirror for his self-doubt by asking them. Every sigh and tremor of the pause was a recollection of Fred's timid childhood in Pennsylvania. Fred was actually acting cautiously around the youngsters when he made Daniel afraid to attempt something new. Because of this sincerity, the puppet could be trusted. It was never overly staged. People felt it and drew in closer to watch. In contrast, Lady Elaine Fairchild let out the pent-up stress that Fred hid from the camera. She allowed him to subvert regulations subtly with her mischievous smile and flailing arms. Everyone on the crew made fun of her, saying that she was the host's safety valve. Lady Elaine opposed injustice and demanded reform, while Daniel sought consolation. They worked in tandem to keep each episode's emotional tone consistent. Accurate concentration behind the set wall was required for mid-take voice jumps. With lightning speed, Fred's brain switched gears, as one hand maneuvered a lever and the other controlled the puppet. He was heated after exerting himself under the heat of the lights for a long time before lunchtime. Still, he was adamant about doing each puppet show himself, thinking that kids could tell when someone wasn't being genuine. In the end, that decision molded a society where genuineness triumphed over ease. On a Tuesday, when word of a kindergarten shooting emerged nationally, the most heated moment arrived. Fred perused the revision, made his way to the script shelf, and ripped the pages out. Shredded paper drifted silently over the floor. Because sadness doesn't respond to cue cards, he said they would improvise. As they hurried down the corridor, standards and practices clutched legal binders, uncertain of how to decipher texts they hadn't read. Still, the cameras were rolling, and King Friday and Daniel had an honest discussion about their unexpected losses. There were no predetermined routes. Instead, the pace was dictated by the actual quiver in Fred's neck. Knowing that this tape was more important than flawless framing, stagehands steadied booms while wiping tears from their eyes. Running nearly 3 full minutes over time, the impromptu portion lasted far longer than expected. As if counting pennies from an open palm, the producers kept track of the seconds. Cut the 90 seconds or lose the show, the network bosses ordered immediately. After listening and surveying the rundown, Fred proposed an alternate course of action. While keeping all of the words from the bereavement speech, he cut a fun tram ring and 2 musical bumpers. The narrative was repeated in training rooms throughout PBS and was later dubbed "the barter that saved the silence" by young authors. That little exchange demonstrated that considerateness for youngsters might triumph against inflexible schedules. The forbidden lullaby was a gentle secret that existed in the space between those anxious days. While the crew's children were visiting the set during breaks, Fred would occasionally sing a soft song about divorce, just to them. Concerned that it may exacerbate the pain instead than alleviate it, He thought the song was too heavy to be broadcast nationally. After he sealed the music sheet in an envelope that said, "Only if asked," no one in the world heard the lullaby for many years. Archivists were sorting through Fred's belongings after his death and came onto a cassette recording of the song, which had been recorded in a hushed session one afternoon. The song's melancholy yet comforting tune echoes the anxieties that many children experience when their families split up. In a message accompanying its online posting, the trustees explained Fred's decision to wait. Time is just as important as truth. His careful consideration was well rewarded. The lullaby is currently used in counseling circles. Refraining from performing a song until the audience is prepared was a way he demonstrated the need of responsible art. During his famous 1969 Senate plea for children's television, the country first encountered campaigner Fred Rogers. Another, less flashy battle, this time without cameras, happened 25 years later. The neighborhood budget was halved in a message that PBS sent out in the spring of 1994. On the rehearsal table, scripts for season 25 were sitting when the letter arrived. The decision to fire friends or reduce the size of the world that children trusted was thrust upon Fred out of the blue. Whispers resounded around the hall, and despite the emotionless figures given in the message, everyone could feel danger. Using a monetary loss as a trigger, costume designer Barbara identified which seamstresses would be laid off. Lenny, the prop master, kept track of the puppets that may be retired when the supply of foam ran out. After noting that some set elements were no longer considered important, Fred circled the statement. He was clearly not going to back down, as shown by the lone red ring. On a typical Saturday, I would have slept in, but the workshop was as busy as a tornado shelter. Shipping crates were used as templates for the removal of foam turrets from King Friday's castle. Using marker bricks that bled under bright lights, artists decorated gray cardboard. The shift reduced spending but damaged morale more than any rumor could have imagined. The painters left the castle around midnight, leaving it lighter yet heavier in everyone's eyes. The studio was filled with excited youngsters on Monday, ready for some royal pomp. The walls were drooping and the paint was flaking as they opened the drapes, replacing the strong foam that had been there before. As they worried for the kingdom's safety, a handful of them started to cry. Fred hid behind some background and sobbed into a towel after continuing to smile until the cameras stopped rolling. The host, like the cardboard towers, eventually cracked, according to a production assistant's notebook. For peace of mind that afternoon, Fred put a little bottle of lavender oil in his jumper pocket. His voice broke mid-note as he tripped over the final song's line about making every day special. After a gap of 25 years, he finally requested a second take from the team. Filmmaker Bill silently lowered his camera. Seams were now visible on the cardigan shield, which everyone could see. When Fred got home, his anxiety followed him, and he began to pace restlessly about his study. He confessed to his therapist in a voicemail he left at 2 a.m. that he was afraid he would disappoint his children. The only documented occasion he questioned continuing the show is on the recording, which was revealed after his death. Even on the inside, he was anxious about the need to find a way to safeguard the squad. He returned to the soundstage before dawn, driven by his unwavering determination. When executives showed in on Wednesday, they were hoping for speedy signatures on downsizing paperwork. Rather than that, they discovered Fred playing hopscotch on the studio floor with chalk columns of numbers. By avoiding expensive rewrites and reshoots, he proved that retaining craftspeople saved money in the long run. Eliminating cold abstraction, each dollar is immediately tied to a child's learning moment. His explanation was more lucid than any spreadsheet, even if chalk dust covered his hands. After pausing to clean half of the wounds with his shoe, the chief executive pledged to conduct a review. The endangered monies were restored to the tune of 40% by Thursday thanks to a modified budget. The carpenter's email got foam orders back and layoff notifications were trashed. Before resetting the lights and making sure the production clock was not missed, the crew members embraced for a sec. Fred drew a heart around the chalk maths instead of publicly thanking anybody, and then he went to get dressed. An unspoken gesture was concealed within that triumph, to be unveiled years later. Fred had established a scholarship program at a local arts college for aspiring puppet makers by writing anonymous checks. He thought that new voices should never be afraid of costs when they are creating stories for kids. Artists who currently build sets for contemporary educational presentations are graduates of the foundation. Another element to his understated legacy was revealed with the discovery of the checks in 2019 estate paperwork. Maths can be tough in any world, as the week when the neighborhood broke illustrated. Through the use of colored chalk, lavender oil, and Fred's tears, budget lines were transformed into human stakes. Advocacy is an ongoing process, as he demonstrated by rescuing jobs and future storytellers during his famed Senate address. The cardboard fortress vanished from sight, replaced by the sturdy and brilliant foam towers. Still, the crew's collective memory was of the cardboard's hollow thud, a signal to protect wonder with all their might. During their daily neighbor time, the crew would gather in a close circle around the craft table. During this time, everyone from camera operators and puppet masters to kid supervisors and set painters would share a brief moment of delight and a moment of fear. Fred listened respectfully, hands folded, gaze fixed on each speaker. At the end of the 12-minute huddle, the last individual spoke a simple remark that captured the collective mood of the group. Just as the lights came back on, that one line became a reliable compass for everyone. Strong ties were formed via the ritual, which persisted even when time was of the essence. A prop carpenter could settle the cost quietly minutes after a lighting tech admits they missed rent. The puppeteer discovered a stack of wrapped casserole dishes in her van while grieving the loss of a parent. A workplace became a support web as a result of little activities that bloomed from those honest minutes. The circle, according to crew veterans, made the show's benevolence feel genuine and authentic rather than staged. Music also had a healing effect, and behind the scenes, audio engineer Bobby Rawls protected the remedy on a secret tape player. Soulful Motown songs floated through the ceiling as he pushed play in between takes. Horns raised downcast emotions while bass lines shook dust loose. Due to the mood boost's consistent ability to refocus attention, production records precisely pinpoint when songs were interrupted. Unaware that the groove served as a stress reliever, even the gallery's youngest visitors swayed. An additional quiet signal method was introduced via color codes. It was deliberate. Fred's cardigan color was a mood indicator for each episode. Laughter and playful inquiries awaited in the red section, while darker emotions were foreshadowed in the navy. In order to read the sweater before looking at the call sheet, new interns learnt the ropes fast. The wardrobe was further reminded of the emotional strategy by the cue cards that were carried on the costume tags. During difficult days, cardigans and music went hand in hand. Rawls would look for a slower tune if navy wool was mentioned, in keeping with the theme. Grips silenced idle chatter, and the voices of the puppets were instinctively muted. A sense of silent precision permeated the process, demonstrating how subtle, predictable clues may carry emotional safety. Many of the guests could feel the harmony, but not always put their finger on what it was. Underneath that harmony were unsung heroes who were rarely filmed. The vibe guardian, or floor manager, Margie Whitmer, was known to carry about zip-top packs of bubble wrap in her apron. She would hand a youngster a square to pop if they were nervous. To ensure that no minor bladder spoilt a flawless shoot, she carefully, meticulously planned her loo breaks. Compared to the stage clock, Fred had greater faith in her watch. Knee protectors were worn by Grip Mike Big Bird Sanders because to the several times he crawled beneath the tram rail. Without suddenly, the vehicle stalled due to a hairline distortion in the tracks, but Mike silently corrected it with wrench work before the directors even noticed. Despite contributing more than 200 quiet saves over the course of 12 seasons, his name was never included in the credits. In his honor, crew shirts were later designed with an embroidered trolley wheel. Smooth rides were more important to him than acclaim, so he shrugged it off. New information came to light in the journals of 2022. Camera loader. Jess Yates created a hand signal code for nervous children who misplaced their lines. As the drama continued, she signaled slow down by tapping her elbow twice, speak up by brushing her chin, and smile by circling her thumb. The children deciphered these gestures like secret Morse code and quickly regained their composure. After Jess left, the producers preserved the method, demonstrating that even little innovations may have a big impact. She has since placed her symbol notepad in the show's archive. When the tram got an overly liberal oiling after maintenance in season 24, it put every safety net to the test. The miniature train sped past the castle on its maiden voyage before jumping the rails and stumbling towards a lighting fixture. Despite hurting his arm, a technician jumped to save the rig, before asking the writers to create a safety episode centered around the fright. Fred paused filming to review the crewman's cut. Weeks later, it broadcast under the title Rails and Redemption, and it taught people that even nice machinery need to be checked carefully. The second micro-huddle of the day was termed Gear Quiet, and it was held at the end of each shoot day. The lights were turned down low, the monitors were turned off, and everyone remained still for 30 slow breaths. As parents headed home, the stop served to reset weary minds and remind them to provide a calm example. According to stagehands, taking such breaths was like clearing one's brain of sawdust. It saved more time than it used to. No timetable ever curtailed the practice. Elena Price, who oversaw the script, took further precautions by keeping a green notebook in which she recorded every unforeseen reaction from the children. Whenever a puppet pause or cardigan color elicited more profound reactions than intended, she noted it. Every week, writers would go over their notes and make changes to future pieces based on the emotions captured on tape. Live surprises were transformed into more powerful teachings through that feedback loop. New instructional presentations use the worn and taped notepad as a training instrument. Coded sweaters, soul music, bubble wrap, quiet breaths, and quick-thinking notebooks helped this group live through long hours, tight money, and touchy themes. Their strategies for dealing with stress allowed the neighborhood to maintain their calm, on-screen demeanor, despite the chaotic behind-the-scenes action. Each trick had a single purpose: to safeguard the area where kids may securely identify their emotions. The show's real family pulled together in that invisible bustle, lifting the heavy weight. With a sense of quiet purpose, the penultimate week of production in February 2001 began. With 3 note cards labeled "Thank You, Pause, and Trust." Fred arrived before dawn. To keep track of his shot blocks, he put a card into his pocket. He touched the card before each take, which was spotted by the crew. More than any director's cue, the wordless ritual framed the countdown sheet. No one said farewell on Monday, even though the spotlight was on those scenes. Despite the apparent strain in his gait, Fred's energy remained constant. He was the only one who could see the note cards as they led him like traffic signals. Along with a little check mark, each card made its way back to his desk. By nightfall, the pile had transformed into a soundless dashboard. On Tuesday, producers brought in early cuts and pointed out something that was lacking. Fred was still troubled by the shelved loneliness episode, which had been deleted years ago due of its excessive weight. He was adamant that it be included in the final bundle without delay. Timeliness was a major concern, according to editors. After giving a quick nod, Fred swapped out the pause card for a new trust one and continued rolling. The network's top brass were hesitant to act, pointing to the sponsor's familiar environments as an excuse. An abbreviated version of the narrative was provided instead of the whole thing. After Fred listened, he entered the voiceover room for a one-take speech. He went on to say that while certain emotions hurt, they really help when spoken out loud. The 6-minute speech concluded with a straightforward expression of gratitude to everyone who watched. Prior to the archive release, that address had no bearing on the new understanding. An illustration made by a youngster and hidden under a seat cushion was presented by Fred on a slide. A solitary stick person, waving at the tram, was shown in the artwork. With its help, he demonstrated that actual children were experiencing the same fears that the theme sponsors had promised. No further edits affected the slide because it remained in the master recording. The crew rallied on Wednesday as the schedule was tightened. The volume levels were locked, and the lonely part made it into the timeline unaltered. To free up space, editors removed unnecessary musical stingers. No more arguing. Fred's previous strategy of bartering was successful. Now, every frame he thought was important was in the conclusion. Fred scheduled a private booth session 2 months prior to his death. For the benefit of senior listeners, he prepared a 12-minute audio message. He wanted 3 things to remain secret until after the air date, and they were all in the log. To start, he clarified that the collection only contained human sorrow and not specters. He added that every once in a while, the crew's melancholy would settle like dust on camera lenses. His lengthy periods of quiet were a kind of protest against the constant din. He thought that people learnt to dread silence by watching TV. The pauses served as entertaining lessons in patience. Stillness is an important skill for youngsters to learn, in his opinion. The pause card now seemed like a badge of honor. He went on to say that every puppet had an argument with him. Disagreements that he expressed by writing them down kept him truthful. When scripts were comfortable, Lady Elaine would confront him. When the terror persisted for too long, Daniel Tiger confronted him. Each message was fine-tuned before it reached youngsters through this mini-debate. Joanne Rogers listened intently with her headphones as she sat outside the booth. Only writing was done on a yellow pad where she scrawled margin remarks. At long last, he spoke out. There was comfort in her shaky letters. After recording the session, the engineers secured the reel in a fireproof cabinet. Until her departure, the pad remained folded in Fred's Bible. While Fred's condition worsened while he was back on set on Thursday, the attention remained fixed. Following challenging takes, the thank card appeared more frequently. The cast felt the clock ticking down to farewell. Trolley bells rung on time, but laughing filled the pauses nevertheless. There was a blend of joy and subdued fear in the air. Even though Friday's last scene ended before noon, Fred stayed. There was the same peg he had used since 1968 to hang his cardigan. He finished straightening the tram track by running his fingertips over the worn wool. Before turning his attention back to the deserted living room, he muttered the famous farewell that millions had heard before. The show's real conclusion was that wordless look, which was later recorded in the notebook of a stagehand. As soon as the cameras were turned off, the crew members began to move in a silent rhythm. The model skyline was carefully placed into containers, while lights were lowered and cables were coiled. After making 3 copies of each frame, editors moved the hard disks to a secure vault. Next to the cardigan on the workbench were 3 note cards with 2 tidy checkmarks each. thank, pause, and trust. They were placed inside an ordinary envelope by Joanne, who then concealed it behind her arm. After then, there were no more lectures, only gentle scratches, an ethereal void, and the main breaker clicking as the neighborhood faded out. The once rejected loneliness episode was saved exactly as recorded 3 weeks later when the master tapes were transported to PBS by insured courier. An in-game homage with just one frame read, "For Fred, who kept the light red and sealed the reels." Fred's 12-minute audio confession was hidden until his death, when it was discreetly broadcast online as a web special. His 3 facts were as follows. The set was a place of loss. Silence was an enemy of loudness, and puppets battled for truthfulness. Within days, the number of plays on streams surpassed 1 million. Classes halted to talk on the power of quiet as a kind of bravery, and therapists started utilizing the footage in their sessions. His little problem was revived when podcasters, parents, and former crew members shared anecdotes online. Chapters ended with the last recordings, but lessons are ongoing with the cardigan, the playing cards, and the flashing red light. After the last student left the studio, Fred's subdued confession beckons spectators to take a moment to themselves and feel heard. Rewatching it again and again shows that his goodbye was really a call to action for more compassionate dialogue in all places. Editors included a quiet homage after finalizing and sending off the tapes. Careful viewers would have noticed a single frame at the conclusion that read, "For Fred, who kept the light red." This was a reference to the little traffic light that remained illuminated red throughout filming, serving as a constant reminder to everyone to be quiet and pay attention. A member of the crew noted that the light continued to flicker during the takedown process, even after turning off the main power. Even though the room is now dark, that little light has become a representation of Fred's influence. The word got around quite quickly. Spin-off writers for a younger audience started inserting lengthy pauses into the narrative of Daniel Tiger's neighborhood. They were dubbed feelings breaks, periods when a character sits with their emotions rather than immediately resolving them. That was an inspiration straight out of Fred's manner, paying homage to his faith in the restorative power of quiet. In its first pitch materials, the Bluey team even referenced Mr. Rogers, praising his ability to let moments breathe. Making these decisions wasn't about plagiarizing, it was about carrying on with something meaningful. A more fundamental change occurred inside the sector. The use of on-set counselors in children's television programs was introduced in 2004. It wasn't haphazard. The trail led to a private PBS document that quoted Fred's admission that the set was permeated by his anguish. The document stated that networks should provide real-time treatment if Fred could detect concealed pain during puppet displays. Although Fred never had the opportunity to implement it himself, he definitely hinted at the fact that by 2008, several children's shows featured hotline numbers following challenging episodes. Later on, a different thread came to light. During a family archival endeavor in 2024, 3 film reels marked "For Tom" were discovered in a locked drawer. These reels included raw video that had never been published publicly. Reports from inside the family indicate that these were more private communications between Fred and his son than anything having to do with puppets or scripts. For the time being, the cassettes are locked, although there is increasing speculation about incorporating them into a holographic exhibition. If it comes to fruition, it may provide the clearest glimpse at what Fred thought was most important for both kids and adults. According to an original program producer, the light red dedication had more to do with timing than that. Permission was at issue. Fred allowed everyone to pause, reflect, and feel something without feeling obligated to immediately address it. Writers still use that framework when depicting moments of bereavement, transition, or divorce in modern works. They don't see Fred's work as weak TV, but as powerful TV that can deal with genuine emotions. Few people realize that many children's therapists now include Fred's incidents into their practice. They ask the children to guess what Fred meant by the silence after pausing the tape at the exact spot where he paused. In many cases, the responses they receive are far more forthright than what any question could elicit. Fred was more than a teacher. In an effort to assist the adults, he has left a playbook for them. During a studio remodel, the actual bulb that was causing the light to blink was removed. One crew member, however, brought it home and preserved it in a shadow box. He gave it to a young editor who had grown up with the show at his retirement party. She keeps the little glass lens on her desk as a constant reminder that strong things can happen in the stillness. Fred probably didn't anticipate the number of policies, scripts, and shows that could be traced back to his 12 minutes of truth when he recorded that last booth session. Clarity was all he ever wanted, no credit. That realization ignited a change in mindset. It arrived slowly, one sentence at a time, with just a single pause when it really counted. Even in 2024, Fred has 3 unplayed tapes that hint that his voice is far from finished. Much obliged for your time. Remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you loved this video. If you want to see more incredible videos, click on the one that appears next.